This is Negotiate X TV.
Hello and welcome to the Negotiate X podcast. I am your host and co-founder Nolan Martin. With me today is my good friend, co-founder Aram Denesian. Aram, how's it going, man? How are you doing?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day here. How are things in your neck of the woods?
It's actually rainy and it's still into March, and cold. So I'm hoping that it gets warmer soon, and I'm looking forward to all the flowers and trees and everything coming back. So
yeah, it's always that breath of new life, right? That's kind of the fun of spring starting. Although up where I live, we kind of call the beginning of spring mud season, and so not as enjoyable and pleasant. Just get kind of wet and mucky for a while.
Hey, let's jump right into it. Now, this is a question that got brought up. I was doing military training recently with an organization, and one thing that I think really stood out to the participants of the training was really digging into interests. And when we think about interest, thinking about it from the company, the organizational perspective, and then the individual perspective. So, Aram, without further ado, let's jump into this podcast.
I think interest comes up quite a bit, Nolan. We define interest as what motivates a party to negotiate in the first place. It's what they're trying to satisfy through a negotiated agreement. We would give it further definition, and we would distinguish interest from positions being wants, demands, kind of singular solutions to a problem, to interest being the underlying needs, fears, concerns, and motivations that, again, are driving somebody to negotiate.
When you're talking about organizational interest, you're really thinking about the strategic, the financial, the operational, relational, and then we're going to add that fifth component, and that's personnel. All of these are going to be interest of the organization. So, Aram, with strategic organizational interest, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so I think we're talking, building a brand image, being able to keep customers happy, managing risk really well, particularly in this volatile environment that we have experienced between a pandemic and now a war in Eastern Europe that is affecting so many things. I mean, we just need to manage risks, streamline supply chain constraints. Oftentimes businesses are trying to manage their margins. They're looking to expand into, adjacent markets, or potentially respond to, preemptively to different competition that they're anticipating, competitive threats. Expanding their product line, their services, maybe to existing customers or to future customers. So they might be trying to expand their customer base. Obviously, organizationally, companies are always trying to, increase efficiencies of their operations, how they're handling fixed costs versus variable costs, and managing their cash flow. And all those things show up so often in interest. And to your last point too, they're trying to manage human talent, right? It's very costly to let your employees have a high turnover rate with employees. So they're trying to keep people engaged, keep people happy. That's a number of things that companies are trying to achieve through negotiation.
So whenever you're negotiating, and you really just have to think about what's the overall different interests, so that as you start to prepare and plan how you're going to move through the negotiation, you at least have some sort of thought. And these are assumptions, and we can always test our assumptions as we talk with our counterparts to really understand the interest of, all of the different stakeholders that are involved in the negotiation. So
yeah, I would build on what you said about we do make assumptions about what their interests might be. If we prepare well in negotiation, we've spent time thinking about ours, and I know we're going to get into individual interests in a moment, but we thought about our organization's interests, and hopefully we spent some time thinking about their organization's interests. And so as we get into the negotiation, a few helpful things to kind of start getting the conversation flowing around interests is sharing our own, building some reciprocity, get them to share back, and inquire about theirs, right? I've thought about what yours might be. Curious what I have wrong. Let me test my assumptions. I understand what your position is. Why that position? How does that help you? Those are some good ways to really get to those underlying organizational concerns they might have.
And so what makes this all very complex is that, you know, the individual also has interests. So although it may be an organizational negotiation, that individual that is your counterpart is going to also have some, you know, for probably not for selfish concerns, but definitely some of their own interests. Isn't that right, Aaron?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think you've said it well. And I think sometimes our tendency now, if we've done a good job of thinking about our organization's interests and their organization's interests, is we start to forget that there's a human being there across the table from us, right? Or hopefully, if we've reframed the setting, maybe next to us at the table, and we're solving this problem. And that person has interests too. And those come in a variety of shapes too, right? They're trying to earn a bonus perhaps, or meet a certain performance metric, or they are, you know, they're trying to just avoid the hassle or inconvenience of going back and explaining to their boss something that, you know, is opposite of what their boss wanted. You know, they've got interests around, you know, building new skills, demonstrating some competency as a negotiator, as a problem solver at the table. They're probably looking for, you know, both immediate and future positioning career opportunities within the organization. They're trying to maintain internal relationships. If this is a long-term, I can imagine a long-term kind of supplier relationship, they're concerned about, you know, keeping us happy and are maintaining that relationship, but not at any cost, right? At a fair, doing something that's fair and reasonable. And I think if you get, you know, a little higher up, we sometimes talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, people want to be respected. They want to do work that really has meaning and matters for the world or matters for the organization. And so I think those sort of things come into play too. We often think about interest as being not just the tangible or substance components to a negotiation, but also being some of those psychological and emotional things too that are occurring for a person and to an organization as well.
Yeah, and I think jumping into Psychology 101 here, I'll kind of rewind a little and explain the Maslow's hierarchy. I'm sure majority of our listeners have already heard this once in their life, but I'll basically go over it one more time. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is basically a pyramid, and at the base level, you have your physiological needs. And so these are the most important things that someone needs to satisfy before they can start getting at the other levels, which I'll get to here now. So the fourth level is going to be safety needs. So as long as they feel safe, then that addresses that level. Then you're going to have belongingness and love. So it's a third level up from the bottom. Then at the second level to the top, you're going to have esteem needs. And then at the very top is self-actualization. So what Aaron just said is that we can't immediately jump to trying to put someone's name on a library and think that we have satisfied safety needs. So if there's a safety concern, that needs to be addressed first before we can really start digging at interests that may be up and above that on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Does that make sense, Aaron?
Yeah, it does. And I think the discipline is in digging around what those needs are. Let me give you an illustration that I like using. I walk in the other day to our kitchen, and my two youngest daughters, who are 5 and 3, are fighting over the very last orange that we have in the house. Okay. And my 5-year-old, who's a little taller, is holding up over her head and says, I got the orange. It's mine. It's mine. And I walk in, right, and they're just, and I'm trying to get work done. I can't remember if you and I maybe have been on a call or something, but anyway, so I grab the orange, right, and in the wisdom of Solomon, I grab this thing, which I know looks very scary. This was a gift from my mother. It's a meat cleaver, right? But I grab it, and in the wisdom of Solomon, I put it down and I chop that orange in half. Problem solved. They both get half the orange, right? Problem solved. But the problem's not really solved, is it? Because if I watch them for a little bit, I notice something. I noticed the 3-year-old who has sugar problems carefully. She just needs energy. She's hungry all the time. It seems like she's growing. She's a grown little lady. She's peels the orange very carefully, eats the fruit of the orange, but she doesn't feel great because she really needed to satisfy her hunger. She really needed a whole orange. and she really needed that sugar from an entire orange. And if I watch my 5-year-old who's just starting to learn how to bake and has a great class that she goes to of kids, and she had promised them she'd bring in some chocolate orange brownies. Well, if I watch her, she takes her half of the orange and she carefully peels it, and then she uses the orange peel. She grates it to make some chocolate orange brownies, but she can only make a half batch. So now she's not going to have enough for the entire class. She's going to let her teacher down, and she's going to let her classmates down. And so she's disappointed, right? She's frustrated. They had different interests that I didn't take the time to uncover. And had I done that, I could have potentially solved for the real problem. And that's why, kind of as you lay out Maslow's, it's really important to spend time digging into these layers of interest.
And that's not the only story or the only illustration that we're going to bring to this.
Oh, there's so many, there's so many examples. So one is, why? Because you and I would say that interests are the essential foundation for all the sort of work we do. And the reason that we tried to build working relationships and develop good, effective two-way communication, manage the process well, the reason that we're able then to get creative around options and different possible solutions, find things that are fair, reasonable, defendable, and make commitments that last is because we understand interest. In fact, I would say too, our ability to know our walk away, if we bring in the seventh element there of alternatives, is really enhanced because I know what I'm motivated by. I know what my needs are. And so I like to, another illustration, just to emphasize why these things are important, is to use Lego blocks. And if you ever take a look back, and again, folks that are just listening, I have on my shelf here, I have one of my favorite Lego sets. I love Legos. They're so much better than when we were kids. Nolan.
We were kids when you were a kid, and then I probably had.
Ouch. 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 That hurts. Shots fired. Shots fired, as my wife and I like to say. All right. That is my Seinfeld Lego set. Okay, so it just tells you how much I like Legos. My kids get me a Lego set once a year or so. That was a show about nothing, by the way. I hope ours is a show about something. There you go. There's a little plug. There's a number of good Seinfeld negotiation videos. But if you think of interest versus positions as building blocks, if you negotiate around a position, a demand, okay, the surface level, what somebody wants, that's like uncovering 2 or 3 Lego bricks. And, you put these things together, if I can get them put together, you can't build a whole lot, right? There's not a lot of room for creativity what you can create, all right? When you bring an entire bag, and I got an entire bag here, I'm trying to pour it out, but Legos are so cool these days in terms of all the different shapes and sizes, just like interest, right? They come in. The things you can then build together is just enhanced. So this whole thing that we're going to try to get to around value creation it's only possible if you understand all the interests that both parties bring, and you're both organizationally and individually.
All right, Aram. So now that we understand interest really well, let's also think about some of the applications that we've had in our life. And I know that there's a story about you in Afghanistan that you like to share to also highlight where you may have failed in uncovering the interest. You want to tell us that story?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So in 2010, I was in Afghanistan doing a variety of work. I was working in the National Military Academy. I was doing some kind of freelancing with different organizations too, looking at their key leader engagement. So I was at a FOB with a particular unit. There was a supply truck coming in. It had been attacked. And the commander of the FOB and the police chief who was housed on the FOB with them and they wanted to work together was the desire. That's what the commander wanted, to go out and address this. But he really wanted the police chief to take lead. And so it became this tug of war around positions, which was, you go do it, we'll follow. No, I won't. You go do it. And maybe we'll follow. And it became like this positional debate about who should go. And they fight for about half an hour ineffectively. So no one's going to go deal with this vehicle that's been attacked. Police chief leaves, and the commander just kind of looks at me and says, listen, I know what he's thinking. There's no way around this. I don't particularly find that approach helpful because we're not digging into why not, right? Let's explore the interest. So I followed the police chief out and went to his office and I said, hey, tell me more. I'm kind of new to the FOB. What's going on here? And he said, I would be more than happy to go address this. He goes, however, communications with the Americans through our current radio systems have been really poor. He says, I am concerned about, not the initial approach, but kind of if anything happens, kind of the follow-up, are my troops kind of prepared to handle this? And 3, he goes, there's a few pieces of equipment we've been asking for some time that might be able to help us, right? Those are the interests. Those were the things that he had wanted addressed that never got brought up in the conversation. And so I sat and listened to her for a while, and eventually his sense of kind of pride, which is an interest, right, and being respected, took over, and he said, I'm going to launch something. And so he ends up launching a response that never gets coordinated with the American unit because the communication is broken down. So in a way, the American commander got kind of the action that he wanted, but it didn't really solve the bigger problem. And what was interesting enough is that night, I'm there again, there at the headquarters again. They pick up on their big eye in the sky camera, a couple of guys putting in an IED down the road. Same conversation as earlier that afternoon, I'd like you to go deal with it. No, we won't. We want you to deal with it. And they're back, fighting over positions again versus getting to these underlying interests. So sometimes you can get a behavioral action that you want by negotiating around positions, but it's not really what you wanted, right? You're creating more problems down the road. So that's an example of a failure. Do we have any moment for maybe a success too?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me put something maybe more in a business term here. So colleagues of Nolan and myself years ago were advising a company that was buying a number of patents from an individual. And this individual actually made these little cardboard-like boxes that that burgers come in. Sometimes you'll see them at like a fast food restaurant, like a little take-home box, and that was one of the patents. And they'd gotten, most of the terms had been settled except for the final kind of royalty, the ongoing royalty fee. And the company was like, we're not giving you more than 1% on these patents. And he was like insisting for no less than 3%. They're only a couple percentage points off. You can say that's insignificant, but over time, it's actually a fairly good amount of money. And so our colleagues were brought in to help kind of consult on this issue. And the first thing they did is said, hey, can we go talk to this individual who you're buying the patents from? And they said, sure. And so they go down to meet with this person. And he says, hey, he goes, do you even understand the nature of these patents, the things that I'm creating? I said, no, we don't. Would you teach us, right? Some openness, right? And that's really important when it comes to interest. And so he takes them down. He shows them one of these machines for these kind of that cut out these burger boxes. Lots of blades, lots of sharp stuff. And he said, I am concerned that if I sell the patents for this, somebody is eventually going to lose a finger, lose something, and I'm going to get sued even though I'm disconnected from it. He goes, I want protection. I want some way to manage my risk. I need some insurance. And so he goes, that extra percentage allows me to do that. And not only that, he goes, I promised my wife that when I retired and took it easier, we would go on a bit of vacation. I'd like to be able to afford a really nice vacation over to Europe for a few weeks, be able to do something fun. And truth is, I've got other patents that some of these patents that they're asking for, I'm still tinkering with, and I'd still like to do that even though I'm in a semi-retired state. Those were his interests. And once those were taken back to the company said, well, gee whiz, we would really like to be able to consult him from time to time. I wonder if we could put him on some sort of like $1 a day or $1 a year sort of program, bring him in, get him on the company insurance. Now he's completely protected if there's ever a lawsuit. Not only that, but if as an employee, we've got some resources, company transportation that can help with that vacation. And we didn't want all the patents in the first place. We thought we had to take them all. We're more than happy for him to keep some of the ones that he's continued to tinker with, right? That solution, which was better for both of them, only came about because I understand the interest. And the punchline is that percentage difference, right? 3 and 1 that they were fighting at, it actually went down to about a half. So it actually went lower because the interest got satisfied, which is the power of interest.
Yeah. And I think that is like super powerful story there, Aram. I mean, it really, when you start to understand everybody's interests, I mean, the end result could be that much better because you're able to combine everything. You're able to, identify everything. And like you said, you come up with a much better solution. So great job to our colleagues who figured that one out. That was a pretty cool story.
Yeah. They'll tell you that it was the win-win for the two parties involved, but it was not the win-win-win because
as Michael Scott likes to say,
because they were not, they did not bill. They should have billed by the amount of savings they were able to achieve rather than by the hour, because by billing by the hour, they did not come out nearly in as good a shape as if they would have billed based on the savings. Lesson learned.
All right. Well, let's close this thing out. I think we did an awesome job, especially with all your demonstrations. You had 2 great stories there, 1 failure, 1 overwhelmingly positive result that highlights interests. Aram, over to you for key takeaways.
Yeah. So just a couple of things, folks. First of all, how do you pull out interests? 1, share your own. 2, ask about theirs, test your understanding of theirs. And then 3, use options, these possibilities, give them to compare some options, get them to critique a crazy idea. Don't ask them for commitment. Just say, hey, what's wrong with this? All those things are going to help uncover fears, needs, concerns, and motivations. For folks watching the video, let me give you one more illustration that I often use with students, and they enjoy it. My wife and I, back in the holidays, were looking at buying some bricks for our kids, or not bricks, but wooden blocks. And we like a number of things about these blocks. They're wood, they're 2-toned, right? You can see they have these pretty dovetail joints on them, and they slide. Okay, we just think that's cool. And so we really wanted to get them a collection of these little blocks. The problem is that, my wife's from the South originally. And so her orientation on the world is a little north-south. That's how she sees things. I grew up in Oregon, so I see the world east-west, just different orientations. And so what we wanted was a wooden block that's 2-toned and has these pretty dovetail joints. But we wanted them on all 4 sides, right? Because she was insisting that they be on the north and south side, and I was insisting they be on the east and west side. And we want it to still slide, okay? And if you're like, that's impossible, somebody's going to have to compromise, right? You can't have all those things met, okay, and still have a block that's going to slide. You would be absolutely correct if you're making the assumption, right, that the inside of the block has to look like that. The whole point of what Nolan and I have been talking to you about, though, today is that while positions, east, west, or south, whatever the position might be in conflict, interests do not need to be. All right. So if we're willing to dig in, understand interests, test our assumptions, maybe, just maybe, it is possible to find a 2-tone wooden block that has those pretty dovetail joints on all 4 sides and that does slide, right? Because we can get creative about what the solution needs to be.
Aram, kudos, man. You never showed us that at West Point. When did you come up with that story?
I'm hurt. I did share it at West Point, and you don't remember.
All right. I must have been absent that day or something like that.
It was the last class. Yes, you probably were absent. Or second semester firstie. We know how second semester seniors are, right? We all get a little bit of senioritis.
All right. Well, great story for me now. Thank you for showing it to me again. It was obviously very memorable the first time. So
all right, I'll forgive you.
I really appreciate it. Hey, to everyone listening, thank you so much. This was a great episode. It was a lot of fun for both Aram and I. If you have any questions or want to highlight any topics that we could cover, you can send us an email at team@negotiatex.com. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions or take any of your feedback. If you could please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast, we greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on Negotiate X TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to negotiatex.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.